I never believed in monsters. I didn't buy into ghost stories or urban legends. Growing up in the Midwest, I was surrounded by woods, dense forests, quiet lakes, and miles of untouched land. And while they were beautiful, I had always approached them with respect, not fear. But something happened to me on one of my solo hiking trips that changed all that. I can't explain it, but I knew what I saw, and I knew it was real. It all started when I decided to go for a solo camping trip. I needed some time away from the noise of the city, a chance to reconnect with the nature and escape the distractions of modern life. I had been on camping trips before, but this one would be different. This time, I was going to hike deeper into the woods that I never had before gone into. It was late November, and the cold had settled into the air, but I didn't mind that. I packed my gear, a tent, sleeping bag, essential foods, and a knife, and set off. The sun had already dipped below the horizon by the time I reached the spot that I planned to camp. I wasn't exactly sure where I was. I hadn't marked the trail. I was far from any kind of established campsite. But that's the part of the thrill. There's something about being completely alone, surrounded by nothing but trees and silence, that makes everything feel sharper. I had no phone, no GPS, just the sound of the crunching leaves beneath my boots and the occasional crack of a distant branch, and the usual forest sounds. The campsite was by a small creek, the water rushing over rocks, providing a peaceful soundtrack to my solitude. The trees around me were sparse. Most had shed their leaves already, leaving bare branches reaching into the night sky like skeletal hands. It felt empty, devoid of life. A quiet, still coldness hung in the air, a sharp contrast to the noise of the city I had left behind. As I set up my camp, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right around me. The wind was unusually quiet, the woods unnaturally still. Usually at night, in the woods, there's the sound of critters moving about, the rustling of animals in the underbrush, the chirp of insects, and the distant call of an owl. But that night, all of that was missing. The air was thick, almost suffocating. I tried to shrug it off at first. The fire I started flickered in the dark, the warmth offering some comfort. I ate a quick meal of hydrated food, watching the flames dance in the fire pit. But still, I couldn't shake the unease crawling at the edge of my mind. Then came the noise. At first, I thought it was the wind or some animal moving through the woods, but the sound was wrong. It was soft, shuffling, like something dragging itself across the ground. I strained my ears, trying to locate the source, but the noise seemed to come from all around me. It wasn't the light scurrying of small animals. It was something heavy and slow, something much larger than a deer. My heart rate picked up as the sound grew closer. The darkness around the campsite deepened, and the shadows shifted. I told myself it was just an animal, a bird, maybe or a large wolf, but deep down I knew it wasn't. It couldn't be. It doesn't sound like it. After looking around, I stood up, gripping my flashlight, my fingers trembling as I shined it around the clearing. Nothing, just trees out there. But I could feel it, the presence, like something was watching me from beyond the light. The hair on my hand stood up, and my breath caught in my chest. The shuffling stopped, and in the eerie silence that followed, I heard something like a low and guttural groan. It was barely audible, but unmistakable at the same time. I froze in my place, my flashlight shaking in my hand. It didn't sound like any animal I knew. It was more like a person, but wrong, twisted. After a few moments later, the sound came again, but closer this time. And then I saw it. It was on the edge of the firelight at first, a tall, dark shape that moved with an unnatural grace. My heart skipped a beat as I realized it wasn't an animal. It was humanoid, but there was something deeply wrong with it. It stood at least 8 feet tall, its form skeletal and gaunt, and on its head it had something like antlers. Its limbs were long and twisted, joints bending at angles they shouldn't. The body was covered in patches of matted fur, but in the places where the fur had worn away, I could see the pale, sickly skin beneath it, stretched tight over the bones. Its face was the worst part. It had the face of a man, but it wasn't human. The eyes were wide, black and empty, no pupils at all, just hollow pits staring into me. Its mouth was wide, impossibly wide, its lip pulled back, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth, each one yellowed and broken. The teeth looked like they were made from bones, not flesh. I could see its breath, a thick, misty cloud in the cold air, as it exhaled in the shallow, rasping gaps. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. It was like my body was locked in place, frozen in terror. It didn't make any noise at first, just stared at me, its eyes dark and unblinking. Then it tilted its head, slowly and deliberately, like it was studying me, like it was savoring my fear. Then the voice came. It wasn't a voice in the traditional sense. It was more like a whisper mixed with growling. The sound so deep that I could feel it in my chest. It wasn't saying anything I could understand, just guttural, inhuman sounds coming out from his mouth. But the worst part was the tone. The voice was hungry. It made my skin crawl. It was as if this thing had been waiting for something to wander into its territory. It took a step forward towards me, and that was when my survival instincts kicked in. I grabbed my knife, though I knew it wouldn't much of a help against something like that. I didn't even think. I turned and bolted into the woods, running as fast as I could. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed to get away from the thing. The sound of its breath, wet and ragged, followed me through the woods, growing closer with every step I took. My feet stumbled over roots and rocks, my body screaming in pain as I pushed myself forward. But I couldn't stop. The woods seemed endless, the trees stretching on and on in every direction. I ran for what it felt like hours, until my legs felt like they might give up. My breath was ragged, my heart pounding in my chest, but the sound of its pursuit never stopped. It was always there, just behind me, its steps so heavy that I could feel the ground tremble. And then I heard it, the screech. It wasn't a scream, it wasn't a howl, it was something worse, a high pitched, bone chilling screech that sounded like nails on a chalkboard, but deeper, coming from the very bolts of hell. It filled the air, vibrating through my bones, and I thought I might collapse from the terror of it. I had to get out from there. I had to survive this. Finally, after what felt like eternity, I stumbled out of the forest into a clearing. I could barely see, my flashlight long gone, but I kept running. I didn't know how far I ran, but eventually I hit the road. Then I saw headlights passing by, and without thinking, I jumped in front of a car, waving my arms frantically. The driver slammed on the brake, staring at me in shock. I don't even know what I looked like. Wild-eyed, covered in dirt, and panicking. But I didn't care. I just needed to get away from there. They gave me a ride to the nearest town, but I knew they didn't believe me. But I can blame them. It was unreal what just happened to me. I just told them to take me to a motel. After reaching there, I locked myself in a room, shaking the adrenaline still pumping through my veins. I never went back to those woods. I don't know what I saw that night. It wasn't a bear or a wolf or anything I could explain. It was something ancient, something hungry. A Wendigo maybe? Or something else. I don't know. But I will never forget the way it looked at me, the way it moved, and the hunger in its eyes. So, if you are out there in the woods, alone, and you hear something dragging itself towards you, don't just wait for something to show up. Just run. Be careful out there. I have been driving trucks for over a decade. Long endless stretch of highways, far from the noise of the cities, deep in the woods, or across the desert plains. The kind of hours that blur the line between day and night, where sleep and relaxing are just distant concepts. It's a job that teaches you how to handle solitude, to push past discomfort, to ignore the weird things you sometimes see out the corner of your eye. But what happened to me last week? It's something that I will never forget, and I still don't know how to explain it. It was around 2:30 in the morning, a Thursday night to be exact. I was 2 hours from home, pushing hard to make it back after a long week of deliveries. It had been brutal, long shift, minimal breaks, and a constant sense of being on the edge. I was tired, mentally and physically. My body ached from sitting in the truck for days, my eyes heavy, and my mind starting to drift into a space between sleep and wakefulness where everything feels like a dream. The weather had been clear all week, but tonight it felt different, like the air itself was thick with tension, a quiet pressure hanging over everything. I was on a stretch of highway I knew very well, one of those back roads where you don't see other vehicles for miles, surrounded by dense trees on both sides. The kind of feel like they are closing in on you. I had driven it countless times before, but tonight it felt wrong. I haven't passed another car in nearly an hour. That wasn't unusual. This road wasn't the busiest, especially this late. But tonight, the silence seemed too complete, too unnatural. Not even the usual rustling of an animal in the trees, just an oppressive stillness. My headlight cut through the dark, illuminating the yellow strips of the road in front of me. I let my eyes wander to the rear view mirror, half expecting to see something in the distance. But the road behind me was empty too. A miles ahead, the trees started to grow thicker, casting long, heavy shadows across the road. It was like driving through a tunnel of branches, a canopy above almost completely blocking out the stars. And then I saw him. At first, it was just a figure standing by the side of the road. He didn't stand out, just a shape against the dark woods. I have seen people hitchhiking out here before, though it was rare, but I got closer, something didn't feel right. The figure wasn't moving, just standing still, staring ahead with no apparent sign of distress or urgency. It was a man, at least from what I could tell, tall, maybe 6 feet or more, with a hunched posture. His clothes were torn and ragged, almost like they have been worn for years. The strange thing, though, was that he was standing completely still, his face hidden in the shadows. I couldn't see his expression, but I had this overwhelming sense that he wasn't a person who needed help. There was nothing human about the way he stood. I slowed down the truck even more as I neared him, glancing at the side mirror, thinking I might stop and offer help. But something made me hesitate. Maybe it was the way he didn't acknowledge the truck, or the way he just felt wrong. As I passed, I stole a quick glance out the side window. The figure's head snapped towards the truck, and for a moment I swore his eyes locked with mine. The feeling I got in that instant, it was something primal. It wasn't just the usual unease you feel when you pass someone alone in the dark. It was wrong. Nothing about it screamed danger. But I was already moving past him, so I kept driving. It wasn't like I could turn around at the point, and I tried to push the thoughts out of my head. I convinced myself it was just fatigue messing with my head, nothing more than that. But even I drove on, I couldn't shake that feeling that something was following me. The feeling of being watched. As the road wound through the woods, the air seemed to thicken. The temperature dropped sharply, and I had to roll the window up, even though it wasn't particularly cold. My breath fogged in front of me, the chill creeping into my bones. It wasn't just cold, though it felt like something was pressing on me from all sides, like the forest itself was closing in. Then came the smell. At first, it was faint, barely noticeable, a rag, musky scent, like wet dog mixed with something rotten. I rolled the window down a crack, trying to air it out, but the smell lingered, clinging to the cabin of the truck. It grew more stronger with each mile, thickening in the air, until I could barely breathe without gagging. It wasn't just the smell that made my skin crawl, it was the silence. Even though I was on a well traveled road, there was no sound of wildlife, no wind rustling the trees, no movement of branches, nothing, just a deep, unsettling silence. My fingers tightened on the steering wheel, my eyes darted around, half expecting someone to jump out of the trees. I glanced in the rearview mirror again, still nothing behind me, but I swear I could felt it. Something was out there, watching, waiting for me. Few minutes later, I heard it, a scraping noise. At first, it was faint, barely audible over the hum of the engine. I thought maybe it was the truck itself, something loose in the cargo hold, a branch scraping against the side of the vehicle. But when I glanced in the rearview mirror, there was nothing there. The sound continued, but louder this time. A sharp scratching noise, like claws dragging against metal. My heart started to race. I pulled over to the side of the road, not knowing what the hell was going on, but I needed to check. I stepped out of the truck, my boots crunching on the gravel. I grabbed the flashlight from the passenger seat, expecting to find a branch caught on the side of the truck or an animal sniffing around. But there was nothing. I didn't find anything. I shined the flashlight down the length of the truck, checking every inch, but it was spotless. No branches, no scratches, nothing. The scraping sound had stopped. The air felt even heavier now, like I was suffocating. Then I felt a sudden urge to get back in the truck, but I couldn't shake that feeling that something was out there, just beyond the tree line. I stood there, scanning the woods, my flashlight flicking from the shadows to shadows. And then I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the trees. Not the man I had passed earlier, but something else. It was much taller. The body was long, unnaturally so. Its posture was hunched, its arms too long, dragging just above the ground, and its head. It was too big, too wide for any human creature, and its eyes, God, those eyes, were reflecting the light from my flashlight like black holes, blacker than any night. It didn't move, not at first. It just stood there, staring at me, and I swear it smiled at me. Not in the way a person would smile, but something twisted. Something was wrong about it. Its mouth stretched wide, revealing teeth that looked too sharp, like they weren't meant for any human. I froze, my body refusing to obey, my heart pounding in my ears. And then it moved. It was fast. In the blink of an eye, it was no longer standing in the shadows. It was in front of me. Its face inches from mine, its breath hot, clenched against my skin. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I just stood there, paralyzed with fear. The creature's eyes never left mine. I felt it. Its presence was overwhelming, suffocating. I didn't know what to do, but my instinct screamed at me to run. I don't remember getting back into the truck, but I must have. I slammed the door behind me and floored the gas pedal. I didn't look back. I can't. I was frozen with fear, not knowing what I was doing, not sure what I was doing at the time. I didn't stop until I hit the nearest town. The rest of the drive was a blur, my mind racing, my hands shaking. I kept checking the mirrors, expecting to see that thing following me still. But there was nothing, just an empty road, as usual. And the trees, and the flickering of my headlight. When I finally pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour gas station, I sat there for a long time, trying to calm my breath. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those black, shiny eyes staring back at me from the darkness. Every sound I heard made my skin crawl, and the air still felt heavy, like something was lurking just beyond my reach. The rest of the week passed in a haze. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me into my home, that it was out there waiting for me to slip up, to make a mistake. It's been over a week since that night, and I still haven't gone back on that road. Every time I think about it, I get chills. It's going to haunt me forever. I never believed in the supernatural, not until that night I had my first real encounter with something that I couldn't explain. I had always thought those stories were just tall tales, something to tell around a campfire, to give you chills before you drift off to sleep. But that night, everything changed. I grew up on a small farm in the northern part of New Mexico, not far from the edge of Navajo land. My family had lived there for generations, working in the land and living off what we could grow, hunt, and trade. There was always a sense of isolation, but it wasn't something I minded. I was used to it. My friends were mostly the people I met at school or the occasional visitor who could stop by when they're traveling through on the nearby highway. It wasn't uncommon to hear strange noises outside in the dead of the night. Wolves howling, coyotes yelping, maybe even the distant crackling of thunder on a dry evening. I always felt safe, though, surrounded by familiar mountains and the constant hum of the desert wind. That was until my encounter with something I could never explain. It started on one evening in the late fall. The sun had already dipped behind the hills. casting long shadows across the land. I was out in the barn, finishing up the chores, when I heard a noise, a soft shuffle of footsteps. It was strange. No one was supposed to be out there. My father had gone into the town for supplies, and my mother was inside the house preparing dinner, and I was alone. At first, I thought it might be a neighbor's dog or perhaps even a coyote, but then I heard it again, a slow, deliberate footstep, almost as if someone was trying to be stealthy. I froze, my heart racing, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I decided to step out of the barn and take a look. The night was still, and the only sound the distant rustling of dry leaves and the faint hum of the wind. I called out, thinking it might be my father who had came back from early. Dad? I yelled, my voice sounding too small in the vast emptiness. I stepped further into the yard, my boots crunching on the gravel. The moonlight cast a dim glow across the land, and that's when I saw it. At the edge of the yard, standing in the shadow of the large cottonwood tree, was a figure. At first, I thought it might be a person, a man maybe, but something about the way it stood felt wrong. It wasn't just the height, it was how it twisted unnaturally. Its limbs almost too long, too thin. I squinted my eyes, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The figure didn't move. I should have turned and run back to the house, but I didn't. I couldn't. My feet felt like they were glued to the ground. The figure stepped forward, slowly, its movements jerky and uneven, like it was still figuring out how to walk. But it wasn't walking on two legs, it was shifting, crouching, almost like it was crawling forward on all fours, but standing up straight for a moment, then crouching again. I could see its eyes glint in the moonlight, dark, almost black, and completely hollow. I know what you are thinking. It could be someone in a costume, some prankster, maybe, but it wasn't. I have seen enough people and animal to know the difference. And this thing, it wasn't human. I finally snapped out and ran back towards the barn. I don't know how I made it back inside, but when I slammed the door shut, I knew something had followed me. I could hear it, the sound of something moving around the barn, skittering and scratching at the wooden door. I spent the night in the barn, closing all doors and windows. But I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. I spent hours sitting in the corner of the barn, listening to the rustling outside, waiting for dawn. And when the sun finally came, I thought I might have imagined it. Maybe the stress of working late, the isolation, the lack of sleep had got to me. Then I went outside the barn. That's when I saw the tracks. I found the marks on the ground, Large, plowed footprints, half human, half animal like, leading up to the barn and then disappearing into the desert beyond. They were too strange to from any animal I knew, and they were too big to belong to a person. I knew then I wasn't imagining things. Something was out there, and it wasn't done with me yet. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't stop thinking about what I had seen before. My mind raced constantly, replaying the encounter over and over again in my mind, trying to make sense of it. But every time I tried to rationalize what happened, the memory of those hollow eyes and that natural jerky movement kept coming back to me. My father had returned late that morning. I told him about the strange footprints. He wasn't as concerned as I thought he should be. He explained sometimes wild animals like mountain lion, wolves, even birds could leave strange tracks, especially in the areas where the ground was soft. But those tracks weren't like anything I had ever seen before. I knew he was trying to calm me down, to reassure that it was probably just some animal. But something in his eyes told me that he knew what it was. That night, as the sun set and the air grew colder, I felt a growing unease. I knew I had to stay alert, whatever it was, whatever had been lurking near the barn. I couldn't just ignore it. I stayed inside that evening, and my father kept the light on, more as comfort than for any practical reason. But despite all our precautions, something felt off. Around midnight, I heard the unmistakable scratching, the kind of sound that made my blood run cold. It was soft at first, like the tap of a claw against the wood, but it grew louder and more intense as the minutes ticked by. I tried to ignore it at first, thinking it might just be a stray dog or a raccoon this time, but deep down I knew that wasn't it. I grabbed a flashlight and a hunting rifle from the closet, unsure of what exactly I was preparing for. My fingers trembled as I checked the chamber, and I moved carefully to the back door. The scratching stopped when I reached there, but the silence that followed was even worse. It was thick, oppressive, as if the very air around the house was holding its breath. I called out into the night, my voice shaking. "Who's out there?" There was no answer, just the wind rustling in the trees. The faint rustle of the dry leaf shifting across the ground. But then I heard something else, a low guttural sound, a mix between a growl and something else, something I couldn't quietly identify. It came from the direction of the barn, deep and rumbled, like something was talking in the dark. The flashlight trembled in my hand as I pointed towards the barn. For a moment, I thought I saw movement, something fast, darting between the shadows. I couldn't make out what it was, but I knew it wasn't a deer or any animal I had seen around the property. I didn't wait to see more. I bolted inside, locking the door behind me. My heart hammered in my chest. I could hear it, whatever it was, moving just outside. The sound of claws scraping along the wooden walls, a faint shuffle of footsteps. and the distant screech of something or someone in pain. I lay there sleepless for hours, and I didn't know when did I fell asleep. The next morning, I kept thinking about those sounds, about the creature outside, about what it wanted. My father noticed my unease, but didn't say anything. The next morning, I kept thinking about those sounds, about the creature outside, about what it wanted. My father noticed my unease, but didn't say anything. He went about his work on the farm, the way he always did. I followed him for a while, but it was hard to focus. My mind kept drifting back to the night before, to the thing that was out there. I spent the day pacing around the house, watching the barn, hoping for some sign that whatever it was had long gone, but it didn't. By the time evening came, I had decided to confront it. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for. Maybe I thought I could scare it off or something. Maybe I just needed to know for certain that it wasn't all in my head. I grabbed the rifle again and walked out the barn. The air had the oppressive stillness to it, and the sun was sinking behind the mountains. The long shadows stretched across the yard, and the night felt like it was closing in around me. I could feel my pulse pounding in my throat as I neared the barn. The door was ajar, and there was a smell in the air, something recent and rotten. I stepped inside cautiously, scanning the dim interior. The light from the flashlight danced across the walls, illuminating the hay bales and the old farming tool. The place was still, silent, but it felt wrong. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and the silence was suffocating too. That's when I heard it. A soft sound, like claws scraping against the wood. My heart stopped. I turned, my flashlight flickering nervously across the dim interior of the barn. There, in the far corner, a dark shape shifted. At first, it seemed to be just another pile of hay or a shadow from the roof beams. But then it moved again. The creature rose from the shadows. It wasn't quite a man, but it wasn't quite an animal either. Its movements were jerky, disjointed, like something trying to learn how to walk. Its limbs were unnaturally long, almost too thin for its body, and bent at strange angles. The skin that stretched over its form was pale and stretched tight, like leather over bones, almost sickly in its appearance. And its face, if you could even call that, was horrific mess of features, hollow eyes, void of darkness that seemed to absorb the light from my flashlight. Its mouth was stretched wide, unnaturally so, like it was grinning, but there was nothing remotely human about that grin, just a sharp, jagged teeth and the faintest hint of something dripping from its lip. I froze, unable to tear my gaze away from it. My breath caught in my throat. I thought about running. I thought about screaming, but I was rooted to the spot. The thing tilted its head, its eyes, those horrible empty eyes, locked on me. The sound of its breath was wet, labored rasp, like something gurgling with blood. And then it spoke. The voice that came from it wasn't human. It was guttural, distorted, like the sound of something trying to mimic language but failing terribly. You shouldn't have come here, it said, the words slithering out of its mouth in a low rasp. I couldn't speak, I couldn't move. All I could do was watch as it stepped closer, its body moving with a strange, horrifying grace, despite its grotesque form. I could smell it now, a pungent, sticky stench like rotting meat and decay. Before I could react, the creature lunged at me, fast as a whip, its clawed hand reaching for me. I instinctively raised the rifle, my hand shaking, but I wasn't fast enough. The thing slammed into me, knocking the air off my lungs, sending me sprawling to the ground. My head hit the cold, dirt floor of the barn with a sickening thud. The rifle flew from my hand, scattering across the barn door. The creature startled me, his cold, clammy hands pressing against my chest as it started down at me, grinning like a predator savoring the final moments of its prey. Its breath was hot on my face, rancid and heavy, and I fought to free myself. My legs kicked out, my feet flailing, but it didn't even flinch. The grip on my chest tightened, suffocating me. In the back of my mind, a thought dragged out clearly. This is it. This is how I die. But then something strange happened. The creature stopped. It hesitated, its hollow eyes flickering toward the barn door, toward the pale silver of the moonlight just outside. And then it made a sound, a low shrill whistle, like the wind blowing through an empty bottle. The creature froze again, and its head twisting in unnatural anger to listen. It growled under its breath, a low sound of frustration. In a blink, it released its hold on me and backed away, its body suddenly as if caught in some internal conflict. The thing didn't take its eyes off me as it slowly retreated back into the shadows, moving in a jerky, disjointed steps. There was still the barn silent once again. I didn't move, I just lay there, trying to process what had just happened, trying to make sense of it all. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out from its chest. I could feel the sweat slicking my palms, my face. I was shaking uncontrollably. The creature paused at the edge of the barn, turning to look back at me. One last time. It opened its mouth wide. The grin stretched even further. The last thing I saw was its glowing, hollow eyes, the endless darkness within them, before it disappeared into the night. The silence that follows was deafening. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I scrambled to my feet, grabbed my rifle, and bolted out the barn. My legs were shaky, but I forced myself to run, to get as far away from the thing as possible. I ran toward the house, not caring about the noises or exhaustion in my limbs. My mind was set on one goal: escape from there. I made it inside, locking the door behind me. I didn't stop to breathe. I didn't stop to think. I pressed my back against the door, clenching the rifle in my hand, watching the window like a hawk, expecting the creature to come back at any moment. The hours dragged on, but nothing came. The house was quiet, like before, save for the sound of the rapid breathing. I don't know how long I sat there, terrified that something was going to happen. that it wasn't over, that feeling that it was still out there, waiting, looking at me. But the night passed without any incident. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat there, wide eyed, until dawn finally broke over the horizon, bringing with it a fleet of sense of relief. The next morning, I told my father about everything. I didn't care if he believed me or not. The creature in that barn, it wasn't just some figment of my imagination. I had seen it, felt it, and now I know the truth. My father's face paled when I described it, and for the first time I saw something like fear in his eyes. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. We left the farm that day. My father packed our things in silence. He didn't argue when I said that we couldn't stay there anymore. He knew, just like I did, that something was haunting us, something that shouldn't be. I never spoke about it again, not to anyone. No one would have believed me, not really, but I will never forget what I saw that night. I think it was a skinwalker. The thing that wore the face of a man but wasn't one. The thing that stalks the dark corners of this world, waiting for the right moment to strike. I have learned one thing from all of this. There are forces in this world far beyond our understanding. Some things are better left unexplored. So if you ever near the desert of New Mexico and you hear something strange on the wind, something that sounds like footsteps, but not quite like footsteps, don't go looking for it. Don't try to see what it is. It might just be waiting for you too. I need to get something off my chest, and this is the only place I can think to share it. I know it's going to sound crazy, but it happened to me, and I can shake the fear from that night. A few months ago, I decided to take a solo camping trip to a remote forest near northern New Mexico. I had heard about this place from an old travel blog. Deep woods, no cell service, a few miles from the nearest town. It sounded like the perfect escape from the daily grind and a great opportunity for some solo reflection. I drove out there on a Friday afternoon, the forest growing denser the farther I went. The road was gravel and twisted through the trees, with barely enough room for one car. I finally reached the small, overgrown clearing where I planned to camp for the night. It was the kind of place that felt untouched by time. Ancient trees, the smell of pine, and a profound silence. I set up my tent and made a small fire. The forest was quiet, save for the occasional rustling of leaves and a distant call of some bird. It was serene, but there was an undercurrent of unease that I couldn't quite place. The sunlight faded quickly, and as dusk fell, the forest seemed to come alive, but in a different way. As darkness settled in, I hear the first strange noise, a faint whisper carried by the wind. I couldn't make out any words, but it was like someone was murmuring just out of sight. I brushed it off as the wind moving through trees, though there was something unsettling about it. I sat by the fire, trying to ignore the creeping sensation that I wasn't alone. The whispers continued, growing a little louder and more persistent. They seemed to drift around the campsite, like shadows moving just beyond the edge of the firelight. Then came the noises from the forest, soft, dragging sounds that seemed to move closer, then retreat, only to return again. The noises were irregular and unsettling too, like the shuffling of feet or the dragging of a heavy object. I tried to ignore the sound, focusing on the fire and the comfort it brought. But as the night went on, the noises grew more intense. I could hear the whispers more clearly now, though they still seemed unintelligible and distant. The dragging sounds became more frequent, more pronounced. So I decided to investigate. I grabbed my flashlight and ventured into the darkness. The beam cutting through the thick shadows. The forest was unweariedly quiet. As I walked, the sound of the fire fading behind me. I was deep in the woods now, the trees towering above and the darkness swallowing the light. The whispers grew louder as I walked, though I still couldn't make out any words from it. It was like a chorus of hushed voices just beyond my hearing. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I moved forward, the beam of the flashlight revealing nothing but more trees and tangled underbrush. I stopped when I heard a new sound, a guttural growl coming from behind me. I spun around, the flashlight revealing nothing but darkness yet again. The growl was closer now, almost as if something was circling me. I started to head back to the campsite, the feeling of being followed growing more stronger and stronger. The growl grew more intense, a deep, menacing sound that seemed to echo through the tree line. I could hear something moving in the shadows, a presence just out of sight. When I reached the clearing, I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the firelight. It was tall and thin, almost skeletal. Its skin was sickly grey, stretched tightly over its bones. Its eyes were black voids, reflecting the flickering flames of the fire. The figure was eerily still, watching me with an emptiness that sent chills down my spine. The whispers had stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence. The growl was now a low rumble, resonating from the darkness beyond the clearing. I backed away, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my flashlight. I tried to shine my flashlight towards the figure, but the light seemed to dissipate in the void of its gaze. The figure remained motionless, a dark, menacing presence that seemed to grow more threatening with every second passing by. Then the whispers started again, but they were no longer distant. They were right in my ears. The voices were clear now, and they were saying my name. Come to us, they whispered. Come and see. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or look away from the figure. The whispers grew more distant, filling my mind with a cold, desperate urge to follow them into the darkness. I snapped out and turned to run. Then I stumbling over the uneven ground as I made my way back to the campsite. I could hear the figure following me, moving silently through the forest. The growl was louder now, more aggressive, and the whispers became a distorted voices. When I reached the campsite, I threw myself into the tent, pulling the flap shut and zipping it as quickly as I could. The figure was still outside, its presence a looming threat just beyond the fabric of the tent. The growling and whispering continued outside, growing louder and more frantic as the night went on. I huddled in the corner of the tent, tried to ignore the sounds and convince myself that I was safe in my tent. The noises eventually faded. The growl became a distant rumble, and the whispers dying down to a faint murmur. I stayed in the tent, terrified to move or make a sound, until the first light of dawn crept through the fabric. When morning came, the forest was still and silent. I emerged from the tent to find that clearing was empty. The figure was gone, and the forest was eerily calm. I packed up my gear as quickly as I could, my hands shaking with every moment. I left the forest and drove back to the town, not daring to look back at the dark woods as I left. The memories of that night has haunted me ever since, and I still hear those whispers in my dreams. What I encountered might have been a skinwalker, an entity from Native American folklore that uses its malevolence to lure and terrorize. The descriptions I read matched what I experienced: the whispers, the growling, the dark presence. I haven't been camping since that night, and I don't know if I ever will be. The forest holds a darkness that I can't ignore, and the memories of that night are a constant reminder of what lurks in the shadows. If anyone here has experienced something similar or know more about skinwalkers, I'd love to hear from you. I'm still trying to understand what happened and why it happened to me. So, be safe out there. Hope you guys like this video. If you did, please consider subscribing to this channel enable the bell icon so you don't miss new uploads. And also check out other videos in this channel too. Like them and share them. And if you have any suggestions or any improvements I need to make in this channel, please post them in the comment section. Till next time, this is Malayali Wendigo. Bye.